with the program. Shrishti ma'am, shall we begin? Raj sir, can we begin with your permission? Like, are we good to go?
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. So who is doing a hosting from your side, or shall I just start?
Srishti, please start. I think she is not the co-host.
Yeah, we'll make her the co-host.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry, I was unable to unmute myself.
Yeah, not an issue.
Yeah, we'll start. A very good evening to everyone present here. I'm Campus Ambassador Shrishti Paper. It is my pleasure to welcome our guest speaker today, Advocate Sonali Shelar. I also welcome teachers and students to the webinar on the topic India 2022 Questions of Human Rights in Surveillance State by PCGT Public Concern for Governance Trust in collaboration with N.S.S unit of HR College of Commerce and Economics and N.S.S unit of K.P.B Hinduja College of Commerce. So first and foremost, let me introduce PCGT. It is a registered trust founded by Mr. Julio Ribeiro sir, Dr. R.K. Anand sir, and late Mr. B.G. Deshmukh sir. To increase public participation and activism towards creating a more transparent and efficient governance system, PCGT has organized various dialogues, workshops, and webinars on various issues that are related to good governance and involving eminent speakers and role models in different fields to guide and inspire the youth. So I'll call Professor Shehnaz ma'am to please continue. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Shrishti. Good evening, everyone present over here virtually. I, Ms. Shehnaz Naskani, on behalf of N.S.S unit of K.P.B Hinduja College of Commerce, would like to welcome our esteemed speaker for the day, Advocate Sonali Shelar ma'am, representatives of PCGT and HR College, and all my dear participants for this webinar. At the outset, I would like to thank the PCGT team for collaborating with the N.S.S unit of K.P.B Hinduja College of Commerce and N.S.S unit of HR College of Commerce and Economics for today's webinar based on human rights. December 10 is celebrated as Human Rights every year. This year's human rights theme relates to equality. And Article 1 of UDHR. I hope everyone is aware what is UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was commemorated on December 10 by the United Nations General Assembly in the year 1948. So there is a saying that says that a right delayed is a right denied by Martin Luther King. I'm very sure today's webinar, today's lecture will be useful for all the participants. They will learn about their rights, and the knowledge imparted by our esteemed speaker will be fruitful for all of us. Thank you, ma'am. Over to you, Sonali, ma'am. Shrishti, would you like to speak something, or should we hand it over to ma'am? Always please make Shrishti co-host.
I'd like to give a small introduction about Sonali ma'am. She is an alumnus of Government Law College and she has been working for human rights for many years. As a young college student, she started Nashik Legal Aid, an NGO that provides legal assistance and others to help for the needy. Soon after her graduation, she quit her corporate law to work for the society full-time. And now, along with her practice, she works for the upliftment and empowerment of women and children. With PCGT, she successfully trained over 2,000 schools of Mumbai about child safety and related law. She engaged Mumbai Police with the education department in this process and she is currently training government school staff of Pune about child safety protocols and working on the revival of Police Didi program. She is also working on menstrual hygiene awareness program, a project that aims to give access to sanitary napkins and educate them about their menstrual health to women of 50 villages in Maharashtra. She aims to use all her resources to make world just a peaceful place. So she's just an amazing person, an amazing speaker. We are having today here. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shrishti, for the very kind introduction. And thank you very much, N.S.S. ma'am, for the invitation. We'll get right into the discussion that I plan to have today with you guys. As much as possible, I want to make this an interaction with you because I understand most of you are not law students, but I know that most of you are curious to know things. So I will take all the questions at the end, but in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat. So as you know, today is Human Rights Day. It's a very important day for me and for PCGT as well. This day is observed every year on 10 December, as it was on this very day in 1948 that the United Nations General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as Shahnaz ma'am told you. This was 73 years ago. The declaration has been translated into all languages. All kinds of attempts have been made to implement it fully. But whether they have been successful or not is very clear to us by now. It is almost every day that the news of discrimination and attacks on racial and caste minorities and attack on freedom of speech that you get to read and listen in news. It has become very common now. Throughout 73 years, we have seen great difficulty in the implementation of the declaration. Today, we will see what the situation in India is. So the issues that I plan to discuss with you are many. I don't know if we'll have enough time for that, but I plan to discuss with you the farmers' protest, the recent our increasing acceptance of capital punishment, our the bail of activist Ms. Sudha Bhardwaj, and how the bail of the 8 other people who've been falsely incriminated in this case has been denied. The increasing spread of misinformation, how attempts are made to keep activists from representing India in spaces in the world. For example, Disha Ravi has been said to be maliciously kept from attending the COP26 summit. I would, if we have the time, I would also like to discuss the lies that the media is allowed to peddle, the way the journalists are getting attacked under the sedition laws. The Delhi riots of 2019, the lack of role models that the youth has today, the issue of Kashmir, the problem of hunger in India, which has increased and we don't have enough discussions about it. So the issue of freedom of speech being attacked on a daily basis, with even comedians like Munawar Farooqi getting arrested for jokes that they did not make. So let's see if we have time for that. And before we begin, I want to convey my condolences to the 14 victims of the AFSPA Act in Nagaland, and also the death of CDS General Mr. Bipin Rawat, who, along with other people in the helicopter crash, unfortunately passed away. So let's see human rights on a world scale. Let's see what's going on. World seldom agrees on many things, but I was happy to see that many countries have agreed and are now uniting in the diplomatic boycott of the Winter Olympics in China. Now, this comes after human rights abuses in Xinjiang, China. The countries that are boycotting the Winter Olympics are Australia, US, New Zealand. And after this news, I hear that even UK and Japan are considering doing the same. Now, what are these human rights violations in China? Let's have a quick look at that. There are allegations of torture and forced labor and sexual abuse in the camps, where this minority population has been detained. More than 1 million people are said to have been detained here. There are first-hand testimonies of the systematic rape and torture of women in these areas. So, in fact, a detainee of this camp has testified about the incidents in which women were removed from their cells every night and raped by masked Chinese men. It's a kind of nightmare. It's the worst kind of nightmare anyone can think of. Closer home, I don't think women have it. Women have it very well either. In India, the number of domestic violence cases have increased threefold since the beginning of the pandemic. The already high number of these cases have increased at an alarming rate, threefold. So the pandemic started in March 2020, and by the end of the April, we had the report that said that the domestic violence cases have increased because the calls that were reaching, the calls that the helplines were getting had increased threefold. And not much was done to curb this problem. In recent years, we have seen cases of caste discrimination increase. Mind you, caste discrimination was abolished in India in 1950. But I mean, everybody knows that the caste system has continued to thrive despite that. Even today, you get to hear casteist slurs even in colleges. I won't even touch the topic of invisible casteism that exists in colleges, where students who get admission on reservation are looked down upon and often ridiculed for the things as small as their choices of clothing and their makeup. The damage that this treatment can cause to one's self-esteem is irreparable. So to a certain extent, I think even the colleges should take responsibility of the awareness that is lacking about these issues. To get back to more visible issues, a very scary conversation to have in today's time, these issues when people are getting arrested for simply practicing their freedom of speech. Activists and journalists have gotten arrested for simply doing their jobs. Some journalists were even shot dead, some murdered by acid attacks, after which even the FIRs weren't filed and no investigations followed. I don't remember if you guys remember seeing this in the news, but in 2017, a very outspoken left-wing journalist, Ms. Gauri Lankesh, was shot dead right in front of her residence in Bangalore. And there are many such cases. I can list them out. Journalists are regularly being threatened with lawsuits and jails in attempts to silence them. And for what? It's simply for criticizing the government and the government policies, which is the job of a journalist. Also, it is the fundamental right of every citizen of India to criticize. I don't think we live in an independent country anymore. I don't think we live in an independent country if the Muslim minorities are getting arrested in cases where they themselves were the victim. We saw this in the 2019 riots of the riots in East Delhi, in which protests were taking place against the CAA and NRC. And the peaceful protests had been going on for some time. And these riots broke out with the fiery hate speech of Mr. Kapil Mishra, who was never arrested. After his speech, Mr. Mishra continued to make such inflammatory statements, but instead of him, the people who got arrested were the peaceful protesters. Hundreds and thousands of pages of charge sheets were prepared. Attempts were made to drown these activists in these criminal charges. Now, let's have a look at these arrests. I want you guys to understand how to look at this kind of news. Now, one of the things that I wanted to discuss with you is the case of arrest of Ms. Sudha Bhardwaj. Let's look at the arrest of activist Ms. Sudha Bhardwaj, who worked for the rights of laborers all her life. She got arrested in the Bhima Koregaon violence matter in 2019. And I wonder if any of you have heard about this very incriminated evidence that was used against her to arrest her. If anybody has this question, what was her crime? It was allegedly a letter wrote by somebody called Comrade Sudha, written to somebody, in which support to Naxalites was offered and I believe discussed. So Ms. Bhardwaj in a statement denied writing any such letter. So a letter that she did not write, a letter that was not proven to have been written by her, a letter that did not have a signature or handwriting or had any proof of being sent by her, was actually used to not just arrest her, but keep her in jail for a really long time. So we have to ask if we are a part of the system that is so weak that a letter written by anyone can be used to put anybody in jail for close to 3 years. Now, let's look at the use of the colonial law that UAPA is. The UAPA is used to attack so many people. So many people have been charged with seditious allegations, and the number has increased in the last few years since the amendment, since the 2019 amendment of UAPA. Now, let's look at the case of a person who is currently sitting in jail under the sedition charges, journalist Siddiqui Kapan. Journalist Siddiqui Kapan was picked up by the Uttar Pradesh police on his way to Hathras, a village where he was going to report the gang rape and murder of a Dalit woman. Now, when he was arrested, a 5,000-page charge sheet was filed against him. What the charge sheet said was basically that Kapan has used his writing to pretend being a victim and has attempted to incite Muslims through his writing. Now, many people took a stand against this arrest. The Kerala Union of Working Journalists put out a statement calling out this arrest. But after over a year, Siddiqui Kapan continues to be in jail under these charges. Man was arrested while on the way to cover a gang rape of a Dalit woman. So you really have to remember these facts. Siddiqui Kapan continues to be in jail after over a year. It's things like these happen because of the very hazy and the very vague definitions of terrorism that's given in UAPA. Now, let's go a little deeper and let's look at what the definition of terrorist act is in the UAPA, that is Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. The purpose of UAPA is to protect the country and protect people from terrorist activities. So let's look at the definition of terrorist act. The section 15 reads, whoever does any act with intent to threaten or likely to threaten the unity, integrity, security, and sovereignty of India. Now, mind you, this definition does not say that act done with such intent has to result in the unity, integrity, security, and sovereignty of India getting affected. So the outcome does not matter. Similar are the words of the sedition law in section 124A of IPC. The way UAPA and the way all sedition laws are used to arrest people now is not very much in alignment with the Supreme Court judgment in Kedarnath versus State of Bihar. Now, let's look at what this case said. In this case, the court had restricted the scope of misuse of seditious laws. Now, the judgment, what the judgment said, and I quote, is that comments, however strongly worded, expressing disapprobation of actions of the government without exciting those feelings which generate the inclination to cause public disorder by acts of violence would not be penal. What this means is that a citizen has the right to say or write whatever he likes about the government, so long as he does not incite people to cause violence. Right? This has happened in an earlier case as well, in which after the death of after the murder of Indira Gandhi, two people had raised slogans such as Khalistan Zindabad. And when these people were arrested, what the court had to say was that these people said Khalistan Zindabad, but did it actually result in the public order being disturbed? Did it actually incite anybody to cause any kind of violence? So as long as nothing happens, as long as there is no outcome, it can't be considered a terrorist act, is what the Supreme Court says. But what UAPA says is entirely different. Now, okay, I want to clarify that I say this to you with full knowledge that I too can be arrested for a simple tweet that criticizes policies of the government. And there is very little that I will be able to do about it, even though I am only practicing my fundamental right to speech, which is granted to me under Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution of India. Simply for doing that, I can be arrested as long as the regime isn't happy with what I'm saying about it. I also want to the Kedarnath judgment that we just discussed. I want to tell you what Kedarnath had said to get arrested. So this happened in 1953, and I'm very happy to tell you what Kedarnath said in that fiery speech that got him arrested. He called the officials of CID dogs. For reals, he did say that. He had called the Congress leaders gundas. He had said that he believes in the revolution that will come with the flames in which the zamindars, the capitalists, and the Congress leaders of India will burn to ashes. After saying something like this, I can't imagine anybody walking scot-free in India. These words were said about a ruling party, and the man was let go by the Supreme Court. We can't imagine such a scenario today. And why is that? It is because the judiciary and the executive are no longer separate. I'm sure most of you have learned, most of you know that the three bodies of the state are supposed to be separate: the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. But they no longer seem separate, right? Let's look at the instances that make us feel like they are no longer separate. Now, it's very clearly visible from the recent launch of Mr. Ranjan Gogoi's book, Justice for the Judge. It is titled Justice for the Judge, which was attended by Gautam Adani, who has allegedly done many things, but we are not concerned with that. We are only going to discuss the contents of the book today. The book describes a dinner that the judges in the Ayodhya case had after the verdict was passed as celebration, outright. The book says celebrating. There's a picture of all the 5 judges holding hands, and there's another picture of the judges sitting together having dinner. And the caption reads, celebrating the Ayodhya verdict with my brother judges. What does this mean? What does it imply? What were they celebrating? Because the Ayodhya judgment was a pretty one-sided judgment, if I'm not wrong. Does that imply something? Does it mean that the judges were celebrating the outcome of this verdict? The actions of former CJI and the former CJI, who is also currently the member of Parliament, raises so many questions. I mean, this person was happy about this verdict. This person later became the member of Parliament. This person is not afraid to say that his fellow judges and him celebrated this verdict. What does this mean? Are we still living in a secular country? I have so many questions. And the other question that I want to ask is, why is AFSPA needed? Why do we need a law that has caused enough killings of innocent people? Why do we still need it? Because because the army officials can be falsely accused. I mean, if that is the logic, then we also don't need laws that protect women and children, right? Because women and children can also be falsely accused. So we have to really logically think about it. I mean, there are many reports that will say various things, but honestly, all of this comes down to logical conclusions that regular citizens like you and I can very easily conclude. So you have to learn to ask questions like that. The way we keep blaming other countries for what has happened to us, and this brings me into the issue that I wanted to discuss, which is hunger. The problem of hunger in India. Despite scheme after scheme, the number of hungry people, the number of people dying of starvation in India has increased. And why is that? I mean, schemes coming out, we see the ads, but what about the implementation of these schemes, right? Our media likes to blame Pakistan for most of the troubles that we've had. If you open any news channel right now, the news must be the wedding of Katrina Kaif and Vicky Kaushal, or something like something that is other country, something that is happening in India for which the other country is responsible. And most of the times it's Pakistan. Every time Pakistan has done something. So media likes to blame Pakistan for most of the troubles that Indians have. But if you look at the hunger index that was published in 2019 or 2020, I believe, India stood among 117 countries, India stood at 110 rank. That is the lowest. That is the eighth lowest from the bottom. I mean, we have actually surpassed the number of malnutrition cases that existed during the time of independence. So the number of cases of malnutrition that we have today are actually comparatively a lot more than we had during the independence. So who do we blame for what is happening today? We don't have, I mean, the Britishers are not here anymore. We are the people who are running this country. Who are we going to blame? You have to, I mean, it bothers me that countries like Bangladesh and Afghanistan are actually ahead of us in this index. India comes in the bottom 8 of the hunger index. And that's the kind of, what happens to all these schemes? What happens to all this money that is granted? We really have to learn to ask questions like that. And when it comes to issues like hunger, these problems are often invisible to most of us, especially in cities like Bombay. And I really have to blame media for it, both the media and the social media, because I believe we are feeding ourselves information through, we are only feeding ourselves information through funny tweets and loud Instagram reels. And I feel like the worse the problems are getting, the louder the world gets. It's as if it's an attempt to blind us to the reality. What is happening? Have you seen those reels in which somebody sitting in the car put on a filter, and the filter got applied to a poor girl who was begging outside her car to her face, and it became very popular? Have you seen one of those posts where these influencers go to areas that are not doing very well, go to Dharavi, etc., underprivileged areas, and they click pictures with the children there, and they post it. I mean, everything has become so chaotic. Everything that we seem to be doing is for recognition. I don't think anybody wants to make a real change anymore, which is why I come to you, which is why I speak to young students. And which is why I think the entire of PCGT is so invested in speaking to young students. It's so important because we don't have good role models anymore. Our political leaders, the people, the writers, etc., the activists, these are supposed to be our role models. But what we are seeing today are journalists screaming into the news about how it was Kala Jadoo that got some actor killed. We are not being fed the right information. We are not being fed information on time. And this is all by design. So we have to ask the right questions, instead of being very in, and instead of asking for validation from our friends, etc. We have to read. We have to read books like Annihilation of Caste by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar that discusses the question of caste and how it exists in our society at length. And it's a very small book. I'll be very happy to send anybody a PDF if anybody wants to read. So these are the questions that I ask you to ask. With that, I actually want to close my speech because I want to have more time for questions, but we only have 15 more minutes left. So I will leave the rest of the time for questions. And I do want to leave you with this thing. Conscience is very important, and all of us have it. Okay, if something bothers you, I mean, there are many distractions. Okay, we can doom scroll Instagram to forget our problems. It won't solve it. Your conscience will still be bothered. I know it bothers you when you see a poor person on the street. I know it bothers you when you see a case of a child sexual abuse being reported in the papers. Speak about it. Speak about it on social media. Take a stand. Find what you are most passionate about and take a stand. Okay, stand for justice. Speak about these things. If you don't know how to speak about these things, I can tell you that you are surrounded by the most amazing people at PCGT. Two of whom are present here today. One is Advocate Ruchi Bhagat, and the other is Mr. Raj Barcha. These are the people who are regularly working on ground to make a real difference. So these are the people you can reach to ask what can you do about it. How can you speak up? What can you do about any of all these issues that bother you? Now, the other thing that I wanted to discuss, but I think due to the paucity of time, I won't be able to, is manual scavenging. Does anybody here know what manual scavenging is? You can quickly raise your hand and tell me. Okay. Okay, good to know. Manual scavenging is literally the cleaning of the shit, is literally the cleaning of the gutter by the hands of a person. It's a very, 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 very old age. It's a very casteist problem, and it's still going on. When the budget is passed for the machinery, when the budget is passed for all kinds of equipments that the people are supposed to get, despite this, very recently there was a tweet by BMC, the L ward of BMC, in which the tweet was a reply to somebody's complaint about a gutter getting choked, and the BMC sent an actual person without any equipment to clean it. So the picture was actually somebody cleaning that gutter with bare hands, and the L ward of BMC felt nothing while posting this because they weren't even aware. They do not care that an actual person's dignity is at stake when you make them do that, right? So it's dehumanizing these activities. So I request you to join our fight against manual scavenging. This project is headed by Ruchi ma'am and Raj sir, who are working day and night to fight this. So you can do that. You can come intern at PCGT. You can reach me anytime. There's a lot of things we can do. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you, ma'am, for such a nice webinar. If anyone have any questions, they can raise their hand and they can unmute themselves. Participants can unmute themselves or they can put their questions in the chat box. Sonali ma'am, one question. They are asking like if you can brief more about manual scavenging project that is going on.
Okay. So it is the 2013 Act abolishes all kinds of manual scavenging. Okay. To tell you very shortly, manual scavenging is getting people to clean the sewages with their bare hands. Now that there's a 2013 Act that abolishes it, but the abolition, I mean, keeping the practicality of the city and the world in mind, the abolition, I mean, it was supposed to gradually decrease. The number of manual scavengers was supposed to gradually decrease, meaning that all kind of aid and all kind of compensation and help will be provided to the family of the manual scavengers to get out of this, right? What ends up happening is a person who is in manual scavenging, because of the caste issues in our country, the children also end up becoming manual scavengers. One, because as long as they are on the record of BMC, they are paid well and they are fairly compensated if something happens to their life. So what the BMC notoriously does is they will not register these manual scavengers. And I'll tell you how the system works. So these contracts are given to the companies or to the contractors who are supposed to clean these areas. Now it becomes the responsibility of these contractors to hire manual scavengers. So what they do is that they don't get their proper registration done. They hire them informally, and when something's to happen to a life or a limb of a manual scavenger, they are not paid fairly, right? If something happens to them, this contractor has the authority to give them informally whatever money whatever amount of money he's pleased by, and that's all. That is the end of it. When the act says that it is the responsibility of the municipality to provide them all kinds of gas, all kinds of breathing masks, all kinds of equipments that are required for it, as much as possible machines are to be used for manual scavenging. But for activities, the activities for which the machines aren't available, a person can be employed for that, but all help should be provided to him. And if something happens to him, a fair amount of compensation has to be given to his family right away. Okay, it happened 2 years ago that that 3 people were killed in such an activity on a private septic tank, on a private in a private property. In a private property in Mumbai, and this case was taken up by advocate Isha Singh, who fought for 2 years for the rights of these widows who lost their husbands to these, and she made sure that they got the compensation that was prescribed. Now, what she found during these 2 years is that the authorities have no regard for anybody's life. Okay, when they approached the magistrate, when they approached the appropriate authorities that were supposed to not only take heed of the situation but give them the compensation on time, they had no regard for it. They had to go to Bombay High Court to simply to get the compensation which was which was their right. So the way manual scavengers are looked at by the authorities especially, that really needs to change. So a change needs to come on a public policy level. Yeah, that's I think that's all I can tell this to somebody who isn't into law about manual scavenging. The other important thing that I want to highlight is that this is a casteist issue, and that's how we need to look at it. And I think we will have another meeting or a proper webinar to discuss manual scavenging, because this is a very, very big issue. Even after getting the right compensation, the kind of things that the widows have had to go in the society, it's terrible. So yeah, a policy level change needs to come. There needs to be more awareness about these issues. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. We have another question. It is, what is your opinion on encounters done by forces conducted after the warnings to surrender?
Okay. My opinion, I am instantly, as soon as you ask this question, Shrishti, I'm instantly reminded of the 2019 or 2020 incident of Hyderabad, in which Dr. Priyanka was raped and murdered by some people. After which, I mean, people were so enraged, and 4 people got arrested. So these 4 people were killed in an encounter, and it was said that they tried to escape, and that's how they were killed. But I want to discuss what happened after. What happened after was these people, the police officers who killed these people in encounter were celebrated, right? So what people now believe is that people don't have faith in the judiciary. They don't have faith in the system anymore. They were very happy with the fact that the instant justice was given, right? This instant karma was done. And but no matter how badly you want to kill somebody, that's not how the system should work. There has to be a system. There has to be a process after which it is done. I am also reminded of this person who was killed in Kanpur in an encounter. Now, because it was predicted that there could be an encounter, that this person's life was in danger, the media tried to follow the car that was carrying this person. The media wasn't allowed. This car suspiciously disappeared, and after a while the news came that this person got killed in an encounter. So what counts as an encounter is a very sketchy. I don't think we can define encounter anymore. I don't think there are real encounters happening anymore. So my opinion on encounters after warnings to surrender, I think that these forces should still be held accountable. We saw what happened in Nagaland recently. Sure, they had the intelligence, but don't we have enough laws that give the power to these forces to attack anybody, to beat up people, to murder people? So even if there were warnings, and despite the warnings, these people made movement and were afterwards killed because of that, the forces should still be held accountable, because you don't want to be a citizen in a country where especially in conflicted areas, where you can be killed for simply a doubt, for simply a suspicion on you, for being an Naxalite or a terrorist or whatever. So my opinion is that the forces should be held accountable despite the situation. There has to be a fair inquiry in every encounter, in every killing that takes place by the forces. Okay, should I address the rest of the questions in the chat box? One question that I have is, what will be the consequences if the sedition law is abolished? what will be the consequences if the sedition law is abolished? You will be able to practice your freedom of speech better. That's what will happen. So if we look at the history of sedition laws, many people were arrested in the British era. There's a very popular case in which Bal Gangadhar Tilak was arrested, and under sedition law, and that is the same law that is continued today. So do we really need sedition law? That's the question. And if we look at the history a little further, sedition law has come from UK. That's where I mean, we were under the regime of the British. They made most of the laws, and we have continued those. Now, UK recently got done with sedition law. UK said that we don't need sedition law anymore, and I think it was in 2009. So about it, more than a decade ago, they abolished all sedition laws in their country. So the culture from which we took inspiration to have sedition laws don't feel the need to have sedition laws anymore. So what does that tell you? Do we really need them? We really have to think about that. Again, we also should look at the kind of discussions that were had by the Constituent Assembly while the drafting of the Constitution. What were their opinions on sedition laws? Because so many freedom fighters were arrested in this. So do we really need a law that can incarcerate somebody for speaking up against the regime, for speaking up against the government, right? So you have to think about it from that perspective. The history of sedition law is very interesting. I really encourage you guys to read about it. Another question that I have is, what is your, okay, this was done, opinion on encounters done by forces? Should we abolish sedition law totally, or should there be an act for defense from unlawful detention? An act for defense from unlawful detention. Okay. Okay, sedition laws need to go away fully. Section 24A of IPC and the entire of UAPA needs to go. We don't need it anymore. We need laws that have proper, precise definition of what terrorism is, what a terrorist activity should be, right? And these definitions need to be inspired from the judgments that we have on this matter. So we have so many judgments. We have the Kedarnath judgment. We have Vinod Dua's judgment. We have Bal Gangadhar Tilak's case on this. We have, I mean, the judgments have the way our judiciary had evolved. They gave out very well thought judgment on these issues. So if we must have sedition laws, they need to take some lessons from these judgments. The second part of this question is that should there be an act for defense from unlawful detention? There needs to be an act. There needs to be accountability. I mean, this happened in the 2002 riots of Godhra riots. 14 people were arrested. 14 Muslim people were arrested for causing violence. I think 12 people were arrested, and many years after their arrest, they were let go, no compensation given to them, and no accountability in the hands of the people who arrested them. So who are the people who arrest them? These are the police officers, these are the armed forces who do all these things to them, right? So if somebody, if me as a citizen of India, I'm getting arrested for not doing something illegal, for not doing the things that I'm accused of having done, I don't only deserve the compensation, but it also needs to be made sure that the people who made these happen, that the people who made these arrests are questioned, are held accountable. There needs to be real accountability. Like, I mean, their pension needs to be taken away. I mean, transfers are not enough, you know. Their pension needs to be taken away. Their salary, their promotion needs to take a hit. They have to see serious consequences in order to in order to be really deterred from arresting people for not doing anything left, right, and center, there needs to be real consequences that these officers have to face. So while we don't need a separate act for the defense from unlawful detention, there needs to be some accountability. We can amend our existing laws for the same. So we can amend the Police Act to consider these things. We haven't even, in many years, we haven't even looked at the Model Police Act that was proposed in 2005. That could have brought so many changes. So yeah, we need to look at how to amend existing laws to create more accountability of the police officers and of the officials than to keep creating new acts. Okay, please do send that book's PDF you mentioned. The book that I mentioned is Annihilation of Caste by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. It's a very short book. It won't take too long to read it, but I promise you'll be a different person after that book. And the book is available on Google. You can just Google the name of the book and write PDF, you will find it. But I'll also send it to PCGT CA Shrishti Devkar, who will circulate it to you. One question that I have here is, should NSA be removed as well then? NSA is National Security Act, if I'm not wrong. While I don't know much about NSA, I know the perspective that other countries have on this. We have to look at how the Western countries handle the issue of preventive detention, right? Is it required? Preventive detention is taking away somebody's freedom. It's a very big deal. It's an attack on somebody's basic freedom. So we have to look at the way other countries have handled NSA, and we really have to look at whether we need it in India. But since I don't have much information about the NSA, I won't speak more on it. Any other questions?
Since there are no questions, we'll move ahead. Thank you for answering all the questions. Like, I hope everyone's doubts are cleared and we got a nice perspective of looking ahead. So I would now like to propose the vote of thanks. So thank you very much for such an informative webinar today and for joining us. I would like to extend my sincere thanks to everyone who took the time and effort to be with us today. It gives us great pleasure to have such an amazing audience. I would like to mention some of our dignitaries without whom this event wouldn't be possible. The PCGT Trust is Mr. Julio Rivero, sir, and Mr. VP Raja, sir. Thank you for such a progressive and constant effort. Further, I would also like to thank the N.S.S unit of HR College and N.S.S unit of K.P.B Hinduja College, and special thanks to Professor Terrorism for joining and helping us to organize this wonderful webinar. And once again, thank you, ma'am, for such an amazing webinar and such a nice information for today. This will surely help us to be a better person and a better perspective to look ahead and everything. We thank you all. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Shrishti. Thank you so much.